the pinnacle of motorsports. Formula One on your home of motorsport. Live and exclusive this weekend.
Welcome back as we bring you some action from Albert Park, the Australian Formula One Grand Prix. The V8 Supercars were first out onto the track today, and guess what? Mark Skaife showed he is still the man.
After the most chaotic off-season in the sport's history, the V8 Supercars had their first competitive hit out of the year. New cars, new teams, new colours, new driving combinations. Though new panels didn't remain that way for long. Mark Larkham the first to taste the wall, though he wasn't alone in a frenetic hour-long qualifying session. In his first drive with the Blue Oval's new BA Falcon, Russell Ingall set the early pace. It sparked an absorbing battle as Ingall's time was first bettered by Mark Skaife and in turn by Holden teammates Todd Kelly and Jason Bright. Their appearance at the top of the timesheet's fleeting as the defending series and Bathurst champ showed his class yet again. A time of 1:59.082, good enough for pole position for race 1 tomorrow. A backmarker with a sense of occasion took Paul Stokel out whilst leading and paved the way for Peter Brock to take the checkered flag in his return to racing at Albert Park. The debut of the Carrera Cup class in Australia was but a blur for David Skaysbrook, writing his brand new $250,000 Porsche off.
Now, fortunately, we can report that David Skaysbrook, while severely winded, is quite okay. Can't say the same for the Porsche, of course. Let's check out the V8 results in a little more detail now. Last year's supercar champion edged out his former teammate Jason Bright, who's of course debuting with Team Brock this year. Todd Kelly in his first drive with the Holden Racing team was third. Russell Ingall, the best of the Fords, making up the first two rows. Great result from Craig Lowndes there. That team is only a week old and the car not much older. Ford Performance Racing, 7th fastest.
It's dubbed the silly season, that off-season changing of the guard where drivers and teams search for new opportunities and strive for greater success at new homes. But there's never been quite the silliness of season 2003. This year, only 14 drivers have lined up with the same team, sponsor or manufacturer package that they had in 2002. Paul Radicic, who's moved from Dick Johnson Racing to John Briggs' Better Electrical outfit, says the driver changes are a sign of the times.
As the category grows and expands and gets more competitive, then this type of thing will happen more and more. It's just the nature of the sport. I saw it, have seen it materialise in Europe and the UK, and as championships grow, team personnel are chasing other drivers and other people and so forth, and the merry-go-round just gets more merry.
There was no more significant summer talking point than Russell Ingall's defection from Holden to Ford. It was a move that Ingall couldn't resist for a variety of reasons.
You know, nowadays you've got to get the best team because they're the ones that screw the car together. And I think Ford at the moment as well, they've kicked a goal with the new Falcon as well, so I think the time was right. You know, maybe sort of Lowndes probably went across a bit too early, and I wanted to make sure it was the right time, and I think it was.
While there are some familiar faces in new homes, there are also some rookies who've been given a break, like Jamie Whincup, who's still getting used to the concept of having his very own V8 supercar to play with.
It's a big step up for me, coming from Formula Ford now to a V8 drive. It's really good, and I'm looking forward to the challenge and hopefully I'll have a good year.
Max Wilson, who impressed in his first year with the Briggs Better Electrical squad, considers himself lucky to be snapped up by the Dick Johnson Racing team.
As you said, it's just my second season on Super V8s, and I'm driving for such a established team as DJR, and I'm just proud to be here, and I hope I can do as good as I can for myself and for everybody here.
While many drivers say the silly season is good for the sport, others are not so sure.
I don't necessarily know whether that's good or bad. I mean, there's sort of rival opinions with that stuff. I would have thought that loyalty is a pretty strong thing in our game, and in AFL, for instance, there's a lot of guys that play the whole career in one club. So, for me, there's good parts and bad parts, but the end result is it's happened. It's not my choice, and the game has moved on.
And what are the fans to make of all this?
Well, it's all right for Russell Ingall. I mean, no one liked him before, so no one will like him now. That's okay. If you've got no fans, you don't worry about it. It's no problem. But seriously, I mean, you know, some of those people will follow Russell across, you know, that they've been pure Russell Ingall fans in a Holden Castrol car. Some of those people will be so devoted that they would go to, you know, a Ford Caltex car.
Mark Scaife says I haven't got any fans. God, he'd want to look in the mirror. God. Or look at his emails now and then. Most of the emails that I got are definitely very anti-Mark Scaife, I can tell you that. Most of them have been, make sure you go out there and kick Scaife's backside. So no worries about that.
And so that one constant remains. No matter who's behind the wheel, out on track, rivalry will remain intense. Bring it on.
And if you like, and if Ford fans were thinking that maybe they'd dropped the ball in spite of what seemed to be a couple of years ago a much beefed up attempt with the extraction of Lowndes from the clutches of Holden, well, they've taken another step up, of course, in 2003. They now have a fully fledged, internationally run team that they think will, not necessarily in the short term, but certainly in the long term, take the fight right up to the line.
There's a new heavyweight contender in the blue corner, and the team behind it packs a powerful punch. It controls a Formula One team, has 5 World Rally Championships to its name, and employs almost 1,000 people worldwide in its automotive and technology operations. And now it's part of the V8 paddock. FPR, Ford Performance Racing, is the latest addition to the ProDrive empire.
We're lucky enough to run the BAR Formula One team, the Subaru Rally team. We have a Ferrari sports car team, all running in global championships. So to buy a V8 Supercar team was very natural.
It was also essential to provide the road car side of the business, the newly named Ford Performance Vehicles, with a credible racing program.
We have to be honest about it. Ford have not delivered in the V8s over the last few years, and we have to do something about it.
It's easily the biggest, quickest deal of the silly season. 3 days after being approached to sell his franchise, former touring car champion Glenn Seaton signed his entire operation over on December 20 last year, ending a 14-year job as owner-driver.
I looked at the end of last year and I wasn't enjoying the motorsport. I'd actually lost passion for driving, and I thought, I really want to stay as a driver because that's the part I really enjoy, and I thought the best way to do that is to get back as a driver, because I think the days of owner-driver have gone.
In a flash, Glenn Seaton Racing expanded from 9 to more than 30 people, from 1 car to 3, from GSR to FPR. Triple Series champion Craig Lowndes finds himself in yet another Ford franchise, his 3rd in as many years since switching from Holden.
2 years have gone by now with Ford, and you know, probably haven't had the success that we would like. The 3rd year, this year, was going to be the year that we're going to go bang with it. Again, we've made a change, and you know, but really looking into the future, you know, it's very, very encouraging.
Moving from Stone Brothers, 26-year-old David Bernard completes the driving squad, joining a new team that's big on international backing but low on expectations for year 1.
We're under no illusions. We're not going to go out there and blow everyone away. If we do, well, great, but we don't expect to.
They can expect a serious injection of top-end technology. ProDrive has its own testing and development facility in the UK and employs 400 technicians and engineers globally. The technical expertise is clearly available, but the right people was priority number 1.
There really is nothing particularly magic about this. It's, you know, getting very good people, getting them to work together very well, getting a team of great engineers, and frankly, getting the best drivers.
On the surface, it's a rush job. The FPR crew working 19 hours a day non-stop for a month to make it happen. But ProDrive boss David Richards has been working on this deal for a couple of years. For a long time, he's wanted a piece of the V8 Supercar Championship.
We're going to be part of it. We want to be part of it. It's a great and exciting series, and you know, I watched it from afar from a long time, and it's about time we rolled up our sleeves and got down to it.
Formula One cars have taken a step closer to qualifying. The V8 Supercars are taking a step closer to a wonderful championship year. The NetSpace V8 Supercar Showdown. Matthew White and Neil Crompton will bring you all the action with Greg Rust and Daryl Beattie in the pits.
Thank you, Billy. And there's one man that we were just speaking about, Jason Bargwanna in car number 20. The first time we get to see him in a Ford Falcon AU he'll be driving. And in fact, he'll be driving Mark Larkham's old car. There is Mark Scaife, car number 1. And look over to our left, his right, Car number 50, the yellow Team Brock car now of Jason Bright. Scape's former teammate from 2002 has a new seat, a new team, a new teammate, in fact, in Paul Wheel. And behind him is Russell Ingall in car number 9, the Enforcer. Jumping chip from Holden to Ford. There he is. From Castrol to Caltex. They go out on their warm-up lap as we go through our starting grid. For the Netspace V8 Supercars showdown, Scape went under 2 minutes in the qualifying session. They didn't have a shootout here, just a simple straight-out qualifier. Scape and Bright, 1 and 2. Then Todd Kelly, Scape's new teammate, Russell Ingall there. In position number 4, Stephen Richards, Garth Tander, Craig Lowndes from Ford Performance Racing, Greg Murphy, John Bow and Jason Bargwanna make up our top 10.
And looking further down through the grid, one of the things that's really struck me this weekend, Matty, is just the incredible switch around of teams and colours and numbers. And I know we detailed a story on that just a few minutes ago, but it really is extraordinary. We've come to know certain teams, cars and drivers in colours and packages. And this year, for the first time in many years, we've really seen the whole thing tipped completely upside down. Quite a few notables down the bottom of the order there after qualifying yesterday. It was typical of day one V8 Supercar at the Australian Grand Prix. People making mistakes, very limited track time, putting cars in the bunker. One guy that made a mistake, I'm sure many of you saw this on Network 10 News or on Sports Tonight, Mark Larkham got into the wall and did a little bit of damage to that car. So Larko's one of the folks that's starting down the back, but various people had stories to tell. The track was just a little bit slower than people possibly expected it to be compared with last year. They recorded about, I think, a 58.6 or thereabouts for pole last year, but Mark Scaife prevailed ultimately. A little bit of grubbiness in the circuit. It was a day where the actual air temperature was cooler, but the UV was very high. If you spent any time outside yesterday, Matty, you came out looking like a tomato very soon thereafter. So it was slightly unusual atmospheric conditions. And the other thing that was weird was that the tyres that marked the apexes on a lot of the key corners around here were pushed right to the extreme, which narrowed down the race line. On a couple of corners here where you're doing big Ks, if you take away racing room, it really affects the lap speed.
As they warm up on this lap, we've got 32 starters, 17 Fords and 15 Holdens. There is 11 new BA models out there and 6 new or converted VY Holden models. On board will be with Mark Scaife. This is the first time we get to see the benefits or the downsides of Project Blueprint, which is all designed to even this field out, if you like. It's all about that dirty word parity. And basically one of the biggest changes, the Holden and Ford this weekend, those new models to both run double wishbone front suspension that replaces the McPherson strut on the Commodores under the VY spec. That basically gives, both makes the same footprint on the track, and as we go through the 2003 season, we'll be able to explain that in more technical terms. And a little chip on Russell Ingall's.
Holden fan, obviously very unhappy. He's already started to throw stones at him.
That was actually out of yesterday's qualifying session. He picked it up late. A couple of the cars did go into the kitty litter, and you did mention Mark Larkham. And there's his teammate, Jason Bargwanna. Larko, well, he ruined the bonnet, he ruined the front quarter panel, he ruined the left-hand front door and the rear door, but it was only superficial, so not a good way to start. They've had to replace all those panels on that car and get it back out there. What he did lose, as you said, Neil, was valuable time. The green-eyed monster this weekend and for 2003 is in the hands of Greg Ritter. Car number 17, as we get an awesome tracking shot inside the cockpit of Stephen Johnson. The Shell Helix Racing new look Dick Johnson Racing outfit. You'll see their new livery. Brand new BA Falcons, and they've got a new paint scheme and also a new partner as well. Max Wilson has done the switch from Team Better Electrical. That's where Paul Radicic has gone. Keep your notebook handy for this one, because you're really going to have to get used to all these changes for 2003. And I think that maybe we're going to see a lot more even Stevens racing for this year than we expect.
Well, there's been a really concerted effort on the part of Avesco and Tiga and both manufacturers to try and do their best framing the regulations going forward to try and tie the cars together, and that's one of the aims for the category. And as V8 Supercar racing has evolved in recent years, that's become an increasingly important priority. And I think some of the work that I know was done last year measuring the aero performance on the front and the back of both cars, extensive work down at Avalon Airport, where all kinds of measuring equipment was fitted to the cars, will ultimately pay a good dividend, and I think we'll end up in a situation where both brands, whether you're a Holden or a Ford fan, can be assured of having cars that are pretty critically close. Now, speaking of close, look how close that front splitter is to the road on the Russell Ingall-Mobile, and look at the size of it. One of the problems that the BA Ford had when they first started to do the aero kit for it was they weren't making the front downforce that they wanted to, and to pick up the amount of load that it was generating on the front, they had to go further forward with that splitter than they would have liked. And I say that, I mean in terms of damage. We are ready to go racing, Matthew.
10 laps in front of us. The Formula One cars have already set the scene for a radical weekend of racing. What about the V8 Supercars, Australia's own super brand of touring cars? And Mark Skaife looks as though he's been swamped a little by Jason Bright. Jason Bright in the Team Brock yellow Commodore goes zipping out. And a little bit of dirt behind, a logjam at turn one, and as you'd expect, 2 or 3 cars come up the worst for wear. In fact, both better electrical cars have gone in. So too had Cameron McConville. 6 or 7 spear off and get on the dirt.
That started when there was a squeeze into the first corner that involved Garth Tander, and Russell Ingall was in there as well. But look at this, you've got
Todd Kelly.
Car number 2, Todd Kelly's mixed up in that. Pretty extensive damage on there, and see the left rear on Garth's cars having a rub, and no doubt we'll see it in replay shortly. Jason Bright got a great start. Skaife got an initially good jump, but Brighty continued it over the distance and had track position going down into 1, and the little catastrophe back in the 3rd, 4th and beyond actually opened up the pack, and the safety car will in fact come out.
Oh, what a mess that is.
Sort out this nightmare.
Now that's Paul Wheel
in 16.
And that's Paul Radisich, would you believe it, in his brand new team of car number 65. So further down the circuit, we've got a safety car out, circling around, and back at turn 1, they're starting to dismantle the mess that is Paul Radisich's car.
If you track how that all unfolded, watch this at the replay. The overhead shot's a beauty. Skaife jumps well, but Bright gets a traditionally great start. And watch Garth and watch Russell. Now, Russell goes one way, then goes the other, and you'll find on the next shot that Garth's actually in the grass. Whoop. And then it starts. And then the big concertina. And Russell gets into the side of Todd, who clips the back of Garth's car, and then bang, 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 little concertina act, and I think it's Bernard or Cito giving Bradley a nudge there, and Cameron McConville is all tangled up in that.
See on the left-hand side of your screen, the Valvoline Cummins Commodore, that's what Neil's talking about, car number 34, so that's the trigger to all of this. That, in essence, is what started the first set of smashes, and the second bit came here, and that was as a result of Cameron McConville trying to get out of the way. Wheel couldn't stop in time for McConville.
Here's the onboard. This is Russell. Look at this. And here's where the initial contact is made, just in the latter part of the braking area. I think it's with Todd. Yes, it's just here. There is no room because the tyres prevent Russell from going further to the right. Round goes Toddler. And another shot. We've got this covered from every angle this weekend. Jason Bright, Mark Skaife, Stephen Richards got clear of all that stuff, and round they go. And then it's a nightmare when you're in the mid-pack because you just don't know what's going to come next. People are going every which way. Some days you're lucky, some days you're unlucky, and that's spread eagled the pack, which is very unfortunate for about half a dozen of those guys.
Oh, you mentioned unlucky. What about Paul Radisich? He started last season at the Shell Helix Racing as Garth Tander looks in the rear to see what's going on in car 34. Paul Radisich hit the wall so hard at Adelaide that it basically blew up any chance that he had for the rest of the season. And that was the downside that happened, the slide, if you like, that happened at DJR. Now it's happened again, but thankfully this isn't a championship race. Todd Kelly's back there behind the wires, and Greg Rust is in pit lane.
Guys, just had a word with Matthew Crawford and the guys from the Holden Racing team, Robbie Starr as well. They say Todd Kelly is not one very happy camper at the moment with Russell Ingall by the sounds of things. They say a lot of front suspension damage to that car, and that's the reason it's not going any further.
And a bit of a puzzle here with Garth's car, and he's leapt out and had a look in the boot where some of the fuel system is, and now he's going to have a look under the bonnet. Quick tune-up. Find half a second, and something strange has gone on there with car number 34. And in many respects, Matty, this is one of the good things about this event in some ways, because it doesn't count for championship points. Get your new bugs and gremlins sorted early.
There's no oil in the engine bay.
You can see the damage down the left-hand side. That was Garth. Was it Garth on the radio there? I don't know.
That was Garth, yeah. No, he jumped back in. Yep.
Okay.
So he's relaying the information back to his garage as they really try to sort out exactly what's happened. It didn't look as though there was that bad damage done to Garth Dander's car.
I think they may be two separate things.
Separate incidents.
He's got some panel damage, and then there's got another gremlin somewhere in the system. Darryl?
You're right there, Neil. I was just speaking to the DJR guys before, and their plan is to completely stay out of trouble. They were happy to be out of that shing-ding there, but more than anything, they want to just get miles here. Max and Stephen haven't had many miles at all in the new car, and like they said, it's not points. We want to get miles and develop this car for Adelaide.
Darryl, I'm just a little bit further down the end of pit lane talking to Jeff Gregg from the Holden Racing team. Just give us your view on that.
Well, Rusty, everyone looks like they've got a fairly clean start, and they'll go into the first corner, I guess, going in line astern, and it looks like Russell tried to sneak up the inside and turn him around. So, I mean, it'll come down to what the stewards determine out of that. But it's pretty disappointing. It's, especially for the guys. They worked a lot. With all the turmoil that's been going on. The last couple of weeks, it'll set us back a bit. But anyway. Thanks.
Jeff Gregg referring, of course, to the dramas down at Holden Racing Team. The parent body, if you like, Tom Walkinshaw Racing Australia, has effectively gone under, and Holden Racing are trying to work out exactly who owns their team. There's a conflict of interest, or rules, if you like. Well, it's all being sorted out. The rules are very clear. We might get into them a little later and see if we can at least get one lap underway from the V8 Supercars. Single file, Jason Bright will lead them off into turn one as the restart gets underway. There goes Ingle again, shooting out.
See the bodywork come off the back of somebody's car there. No, it will get collected, no doubt. So Bright leads from Scaife, who's really blowtorching Jason at the moment. And it's a single file restart. Everybody will have done their best to try and keep temperature and pressure in their tyres. Not that they'll have generated much without any racing speed in the opening lap. Oh, Scaife, cigarette paper between those two then.
Through turns 3 and 4, a very tough, tight part of the circuit. Bringing it up to around 215 k's. That turn there was the one that cost Mark Larkham so dearly yesterday. Lost a bit of concentration, dipped it on the left-hand side and found the tyre wall hard and heavy.
Russell Ingle was really searching aggressively for a way around Stephen Richards as they headed up towards turn 6 that time.
Still trying to work out.
Rear brakes on Russell's car, all clamped up as he heads into 9. And I think it could be Greg Murphy next. In fact, it is Greg Murphy right in behind, and there's a little bit of aggression in the pack there as Murph and Russell start arguing over turf. Greg to the right, Russell to the left, and vice versa. Pretty impossible place to pass here going into 11. And see the tyre bundles I talked about, Matthew? And they really spoil any opportunity to do any sneaky stuff where you can get your nose up the inside. Greg?
Well, Neil, I'm down here with Ross Stone. That's a busy and perhaps full-on start to the year for you.
Yeah, it is. We're pleased to get through that first corner like that, actually. And Marcus was back in the field after a problem in qualifying. And so it's a bit of a relief to see them go through okay,
Team Red don't seem too happy with Russell at the moment. Give us your impressions on how you saw it.
Haven't heard a thing about it. From Russell hasn't said a word. And from what I could see watching, I don't know at this stage what they've got to talk about.
He's smiling down here, boys. Must be a good start.
Yeah, we'll be right.
Someone's in the kitty leader as Ross goes back to work, and it's Anthony Tratt. And he's gone off on the exit of 14. So we've got a relatively clean lap in the bank, and Jason Bright leads from Mark Scaife. Margin now over Stephen Richards, and there's a little bit of a... Oh, and someone scoots wide down there. What's going on here? Greg Ritter gets out of shape, and that's what the whole Anthony Tratt thing was all about. Tratty gets out there in those nicely painted red marbles.
They're not easy to get out of. That's a really long, big trap at turn 14. Out the front, Bright versus Scaife, something we saw last year, but in two different cars. Darryl?
Tony, it's a non-championship round with these boys are serious straight up.
Yeah, I guess, after the Christmas break, they're keen to get into it a new year and have a bit of a go. It's only an exhibition weekend for us. A bit of fun, gives the guys a bit of a chance to test out the new weaponry and get really serious for the Clipsal 500 in a couple of weeks' time.
Thanks, mate.
No, my pleasure. Take care.
Well, for Tony it's a bit of fun, but for the drivers and for the teams, I don't know that they regard it as fun. It's a serious business and they take it desperately seriously, and there's not a bloke out there who doesn't want to win this race. Whether points or not really is irrelevant. The interesting thing watching Jason's car, here's more trouble on the braking area down into turn 1.
That's Team Kiwi and Craig Baird, or is that Paul Morris in the Sierra May Wines entry?
Paul Morris, and incidentally Bargs is doing well. He's up to 5th in Mark Larkham's other car. That last time through turn 8, and there he is watching Jason Bright, our leader. The back of the car was already starting to fret quite a little and the car getting sideways. And around that particular corner, Matthew, when the tyres have got good grip, you can either get through there flat, but only just with a fraction of understeer, or if they start to walk into oversteer, you've got to be very careful and really nurse the car. And that will start to become a factor. But remember, it's a relatively short race. It's only 10 laps. Another 2 races to come over the weekend. Hugely popular V8 Supercar racing with this audience at this track, and a massive audience, obviously.
On board we are with Greg Murphy as he ducks up the inside and misses out that time on Jason Bargwanna. Jason Bright leads this one out. The net space V8 Supercar showdown continues after the break. Is this an omen for 2003? Certainly the Blue Oval fans would like to think so. This man is not a happy camper. Mark Scaife, a very rare sight. He's gone off. That's at the exit of turn 14, and car number 1 is gravel bound. Here's what happens. So Jason Bright comes through. It's just a massive lose, and he spun it round 360. And once you're in there, your only way out that deep is with the help of a tractor.
That begs a question, doesn't it? How did all that come about? Was there a problem with the car? Did Mark just get in there a little bit too quick at 14? It's a bit of an unusual corner in the way that it's shaped, but he has stuck that car well and truly in the gravel, and that will put him at the back of the grid for race 2 tomorrow. And car number 75, Anthony Tratt's got a drive-through penalty, I understand, as this little battle here between Stephen Richards and Russell Ingall begins to come alive. Remember that Russell came out of the Castrol team at the end of last year, Greg.
Neil, I'm with Garth Tander. Now, it sounded from the radio report as though you had some sort of oil pressure problem, but there's more to the story than that.
Yeah, about while we're on when the safety car came out for the first quarter incident, an oil pressure warning light came on, so I just switched the engine off straight away. I didn't want to lunch that engine, but it probably got something to do with Russell running me off the road at turn 1, and then he cannoned into Todd, and it's done a fair bit of damage in the rear of the car. So old Rusty was up to his usual antics down there in turn 1.
Simmered down a little bit since you arrived.
Oh, look, mate, it's not if it was a championship race, I'd probably be a bit more dark. But looks like Scaife and I got a bit of work to do tomorrow coming from the rear. Should be a bit of fun.
Thanks, GT.
No worries, mate.
You can just sense the lines of division, Matthew, between Russell Ingall and the rest in some of this stuff. It's already building up now that they're no longer bound by sort of having to be nice to each other based on Holden contracts. It's Russell's up to his usual tricks. That wouldn't have been said 12 months ago, and that's going to be one of the great things about this year is people have shuffled around, and there's a really good battle looming between both sides.
Just like Billy Woods and I were talking about before, it's no longer just Russell versus these guys. It seems to be Russell versus the world this time around. He's got a big point to prove, and he's got a big backing from Stone Brothers Racing to get out there and do it. Car number 6, folks, is Craig Lowndes. He's got CAD sponsorship for this year. It's out of the Ford Performance Racing garage, so his teammates, as we mentioned, Glenn Seaton and David Bernard, they've got 2 blue and white cars, and Lowndes remains in that colour for the rest of the year.
And he's made a spot. He's now up to position 7, and I haven't had much of a chance over the weekend to spend any time with him, but he's pretty happy. He says the car turns really well, and if there was a never-ending chorus from us in the last 2 years, it was give me some turn, please give me some turn, and it appears as though the new car is turning better than has been the case for a little while, and so that's good.
On the flip side to that, if you go back to yesterday's qualifying session, Mark Scaife was actually complaining of what you guys in the Ford camp were complaining of last year. This thing's nervous, give me some more turn. It's nervous going into the turn.
And he actually made a little mistake as the pressure comes even further on Stephen Richards here. He ran a little bit wide in one of his laps in qualifying, but he also wrong-slotted. He took a wrong gear at one point there as well, and so he was a little bit out of the ideal rhythm. And that's the sort of thing that happens when you come back. It's the first time that these guys have had the opportunity to throw new tyres at the cars. Remember, the rules in V8 Supercar racing with the tyre management don't allow you to test with new tyres. So you bolt new tyre on the car, the behaviour changes. Everybody knew their car quite well, like, for example, Jason Bright still fully understands that car. Technical specs the same. He knows the cause and effect of things. If he makes a change to spring or ride height, shock absorber adjustment or whatever, then he knows to some extent what the effects are going to be. But with the newer cars, you're still not quite sure what they need in order to find what is essentially the sweet spot. And you bolt a new set of tyres on these cars, they traditionally make more understeer. The new tyre on the rear gives you great drive. It pushes the nose of the car away. And this is a great battle. This little battle here between Stephen Richards and Russell Ingall. Oh, and Stephen's crossed up big time as he came across 11. And Darryl?
Larry, Russell behind Stevie, old team employee. Is it going to be a nasty or a fix-up job?
Well, I wouldn't be at all surprised if it doesn't end up nasty, but the best spot for Russell is for him to be behind Stephen, I can promise you.
You're obviously happy with the way the car's going, done a lot of testing?
Well, no, we haven't done hardly any testing yet, but I'm very happy with the way Stephen's driving it there right now. He's under a lot of pressure, and I tell you, his car isn't as good as we'd like it, and I think he's carrying the car a bit, and he's doing a top job.
Thanks, Larry.
Jones, brand new BA model Aussie male Falcon. Marcus Ambrose, incidentally, and there's a lot of fans of Marcus out there. He was one of the strong contenders in the back end of last season in particular. He's in 10th at the moment. He's got a fuel pressure problem, and there was some aggravation with that car yesterday, and they were spending a bit of time with the laptop plugged in trying to get to the source of the problem. And he's a little further down the order than he would like. The order is Bright, Richards, Ingall, Murphy, Bargwanna, Bow, Lowndes, Ellery. Oh, and Stephen Richards locks the brake, makes a little mistake under pressure going into 3, easily recovers the car, and if anything now probably puts himself back into even though he's dropped a spot, a better race rhythm, Matthew, because he was getting hustled to the point where it was uncomfortable by Russell.
He got hustled beyond belief, I think, last season, Stephen Richards. He always seemed to get into the spot where he had a mirror full of somebody ready to take him on, and he was very wide. He didn't let too many people pass. Well,
and Larry just said to us there a moment ago that they're not as happy with the car as they'd like, and that's an indication that it's perhaps getting into its rear tyres a little bit as the race goes on. Now, a replay of some aggravation here, is it, or is it not?
In front of Stephen Johnson.
Oh, yeah, there's 2 cars involved there. One of them, I think, was Ambrose.
And the Kmart car, so it was either Greg Murphy or youngster Rick Kelly. That's who it is.
Ooh. Round he goes. Round they both go.
Synchronicity.
Synchronised spinning.
Rick Kelly, of course, joining the Kmart team, stepping into the seat of his brother Todd, moving out of the Holden Young Lions and into Kmart. And the shuffle further up goes Todd into Jason Bright's seat at HRT.
Marcus got more than a fuel pressure problem now. He's got a blood pressure problem as well, I'd say.
Rusty.
Matty just down with John Matthews, the General Manager of Ford Performance Racing. A great start by Craig Lowndes.
Oh, fantastic, Greg. You know, it's better than expected. You know, we only got the BA on the track at Phillip Island at 4:30 last Monday afternoon, and we only managed to pull five laps with it, and they weren't, you know, consistent laps. Had to make a few changes. Yeah, a little bit of time in the car yesterday. Had some problems in qualifying. Fixed the problem. We had a problem with the gear stick. He's jumped in. He had time for one hot lap, and he's pulled himself up from position 20 to position 8. Position 7, actually, so really happy.
Very quickly, it's been a tough start, though, for both David and for Glenn. When will they see their new BAs?
Okay, it has been a tough start, and unfortunately got to start the season with AUs, but we didn't have the resource when this deal was done to put the 3 together. We've received our second BA shell. It's sitting in the workshop. Once the trucks leave in 2 weeks to go to Adelaide, we intend to start work on the second BA. As soon as we're underway with that and we've got it to the paint stage, we'll start to fabricate the third BA. So hopefully by mid-year we'll have all of them up and running.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
It was interesting in the background there, Matthew, behind John, you had Jeff Willis, Technical Director of BAR Honda, and over the other side was Vaughan Cartwright, who now works as the #1 mechanic in the test team at BAR, and he was with us at Wayne Gardner Racing in the Coca-Cola race days back in the mid-90s. So a couple of trouble here. one of the team dynamic cars, as that Wills has gone into the fence pretty heavily. Car number 44,
Yeah,
Simon Wills. Ooh, that didn't look too pretty.
He managed to hold it together somehow too, because he put both the front and the rear in, but out in front is car number 50, and he's got clear road in front and behind him at the moment. Jason Bright in Team Brock gets his season off to a very, very good start. He's been shuffled around in this big deck of cards that is the Holden Racing Team Empire, and he finds himself in a new team, new colours with a new teammate. Stephen Richards is still trying to hang on to the tail of his former teammate Russell Ingall, coming up to turn 14, the right-hander. Only 2 more to go on our final lap, the first V8 show of the season.
Murphy's recovered pretty well. He was a bit unhappy when I gave him a call pretty late last night and said, you know, how was your day? So he's ended up 4th in all this. And the other thing that's happening is that Lowndes is really pressing on behind John Bowe and applying a lot of pressure there. So he's kept pretty reasonable balance with that car, but a terrific start for Jason.
He won 2 out of 3 races here at Albert Park last year, and he gets the first for 2003. The first blow of a new season goes to Team Brock and the Holden Commodore. Russell Ingall comes in second, and Stephen Richards fills the podium spot as we go down through the rear of the field. You can see the Ford Performance Racing team coming through. David Bernard crossed in 10th position. But the wave is on, and Simon Wills is still trying to control that wild beast that is a brand new VY Commodore for Team Dynamic. One of the new teams based in South Australia. He'll be teamed with Jason Richards. Greg Ritter comes across. Mark Larkham finishes his 10th lap. And there is one of the Team Dynamics as well. But a good start for Jason Bright. He kept his cool off the start. Got the power down first, and better and faster and quicker than Mark Scaife. Avoided all the mess and held off any challenges. He just simply had too much pace for anyone to really get up and give him some grief. Russell Ingall caused a lot of grief to get up onto the podium, but he did so. So, what does it tell us after the first race of 2003?
Tells us that Russell's got a bit of aggravation coming his way, I'd say, but it tells us that the top guys always remain the top guys, and Jason Bright wins race 1, the V8 Supercars. From then we've got Ingall, then Richards, I should say, followed by Murphy, Bargwanna, Bowe, Lowndes and Rick Kelly.
Yeah, good performance from the youngster Rick Kelly. Look out for him in 2003 with a faster car under his belt. He should put in some good performances. Paul Dumbrell in his first outing individually for Larry Perkins Racing. Glenn Seaton finishes in 17th. 20th is Cameron McConville. And down to Mark Larkham in 22nd. So the V8 Supercars have done their thing. They'll be back tomorrow for another 12 laps.